Here are key lessons from the book, Psychology of Money. 1. Finding out what enough is. For many people, it feels like there's never enough money. Housel notes that the goalpost always seems to be moving, and that we compare ourselves all the time to other people. Life isn't any fun without a sense of enough. Happiness, as it said, is just results minus expectations. The book gives an example of Rajat Gupta, who was the CEO of McKinsey in the early 40s, who had to lose all the millions of dollars just in the pursuit of even more, risking everything in the chase of more. While pursuing goals, approach should be where there is no need to risk everything for what you don't have and don't need. Some point to keep in mind. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Social comparison is the problem. The point is that the ceiling of social comparison is so high that virtually no one will ever hit it. Which means it's a battle that can never be won, or that the only way to win is to not fight to begin with, to accept that you might have enough, even if it's less than those around you. Enough is not too little. There is no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need. Housel writes, if expectations rise with results, there is no logic in striving for more because you'll feel the same after putting in extra effort. It gets dangerous when the taste of having more money, more power, more prestige, increases ambition faster than satisfaction. 2. The magic ingredient in compounding is time. Compounding helps investors build wealth by generating returns on investments over time. These returns then continue to compound and help grow assets. Compounding is sometimes referred to as earning interest on interest. Many of us know that compounding works, but we can't really understand it on a huge scale. Housel delivers some perspective by taking a look at Warren Buffett. Buffett is well known as one of the wealthiest investors of all time, but it's not all because of his skill as an investor. Buffett started investing when he was a kid, at the young age of 10, so his money has had decades to compound. Most of us can't go back in time and fill up investment accounts we never had, but we can start investing now. The longer your money stays in the market, the more it will grow. Housel writes, Warren Buffett is a phenomenal investor. But you miss a key point if you attach all of his success to investing acumen. The real key to his success is that he's been a phenomenal investor for 3/4 of a century. Hence, staying the course for the long term is the best way to build wealth. The book Psychology of Money mentions that investing goals should be earning good returns that can stick through, which can be repeated for the longest time, compared to the highest return, which is one-off and cannot be repeated. 3. Be reasonable with money over being rational. One of my favorite parts of the book is when Housel writes that being reasonable with your money is more powerful than being rational. He admits that we're humans with emotions, which will inevitably affect how we feel and manage our money. He writes, you're not a spreadsheet, you're a person. A screwed-up, emotional person. It took me a while to figure this out, but once it clicked I realized it's one of the most important parts of finance. In other words, even though something may look good on paper based solely on the numbers, it may not be the best strategy in the long term. He shares an example of how having a fever is actually good to fight an infection. It's what rationally makes sense. But no one wants to suffer with the pain and shivers or hot flashes of a fever. It's reasonable to take medicine to feel better. Housel writes, my own theory is that in the real world, people do not want the mathematically optimal strategy. They want the strategy that maximizes how well they sleep at night. Housel suggests that opting for reasonable over rational helps us stay the course. He writes, the reasonable investors who love their technically imperfect strategies have an edge because they're more likely to stick with those strategies. Focusing on our own risk tolerance and what is reasonable for you can be your compass when guiding your finances. 4. Luck and risk. It's easy to focus on our individual actions and forget about how our privilege, or our luck and risk, as Housel describes it, can affect our financial outcomes. Housel shares a story about Bill Gates. Gates went to a high school with one of the very first computers, altering the course of his life and career. One of his friends, Kent Evans, was his classmate and also was talented with computers. Unfortunately, he died in a mountaineering accident. In this example, we see luck and risk very clearly. They are the invisible puppet strings that can affect our lives, careers, and money. Housel writes, luck and risk are both the reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual effort. They are so similar that you can't believe in one without equally respecting the other. They both happen because the world is too complex to allow 100% of your actions to dictate 100% of your outcomes. Be careful who you praise and admire, be careful who you look down upon and wish to avoid becoming. The book mentions that not all success is due to hard work, not all poverty is due to laziness, and we should keep this point in our mind when judging people. Hence, it is important to focus less on individual and case studies, but focus more on the broad pattern. By acknowledging the role of luck and risk, we can remove ourselves from the temptation to put everything on ourselves when it comes to managing money and investments. 5. No one's crazy. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.000000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. People want predictability. As every person has their own unique experiences, narratives on how the world works vary wildly. Someone who grew up in poor family has vastly different ideas of risk vs. reward than the person who grew in middle-class family. So when you think someone behaving crazy with their money, they're just acting in line with their worldview and doing what makes sense for them. 6. Getting wealthy vs. staying wealthy. There are a million ways to get wealthy, but there's only one way to stay wealthy. Some combination of frugality and paranoia. Getting money is one thing and keeping it is another thing. Keeping money requires the opposite of taking risk. It requires the combination of fear and humility about the money you made quickly can be taken away quickly as well. It requires frugality and acceptance of some part of luck involved so past success cannot be repeated indefinitely. Good investing is not necessarily about making good decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up. Getting money requires taking risks, being optimistic, and putting yourself out there. But keeping money requires the opposite of taking risk. It requires humility and fear that what you've made can be taken away from you just as fast. It requires frugality and an acceptance that at least some of what you've made is attributable to luck, so past success can't be relied upon to repeat indefinitely. The ability to stick around for a long time without wiping out or being forced to give up is what makes the biggest difference. This should be the cornerstone of your strategy, whether it's in investing or your career or a business you own. There are 2 reasons why a survival mentality is so key with money. One is the obvious: few gains are so great that they're worth wiping yourself out over. The other is the counterintuitive math of compounding. Compounding only works if you can give an asset years and years to grow. 7. Freedom. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, is priceless. It is the highest dividend money pays. The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. People want to become wealthier to make them happier. Happiness is a complicated subject because everyone's different. But if there's a common denominator in happiness, a universal fuel of joy, it's that people want to control their lives. Money's greatest intrinsic value, and this can't be overstated, is its ability to give you control over your time. To obtain, bit by bit, a level of independence and autonomy that comes from unspent assets that give you greater control over what you can do and when you can do it. Aligning money towards a life that lets you do what you want, when you want, with who you want, where you want, for as long as you want, has incredible return. Independence doesn't mean you'll stop working. It means you only do the work you like with people you like at the times you want for as long as you want. 8. Man in the car paradox. No one is impressed with your possessions as much as you are. The book Psychology of Money cites that there is a paradox that people tend to want wealth to signal others that they should be liked and admired. But in most cases, people just bypass admiring you. If you are seeking respect, admiration, and respect through richness, then it is not an effective way to seek it. Instead, humility, kindness, and empathy will bring in more admiration and respect. 9. Wealth is what you don't see. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. We tend to think people's wealth by what we see, because that's the information we have in front of us. Someone driving a luxury car and showing off a car is wealth, but actually it's another way around. Wealth is what you don't see. Wealth is the nice cars not purchased. Wealth, in simple words, is assets that you have not converted into the stuff you see. Most people say they want to be millionaire, but in fact do the things that are exactly opposite, which are needed to be millionaire. 10. Room for error. Margin of safety, you can also call it room for error or redundancy, is the only effective way to safely navigate a world that is governed by odds, not certainties. And almost everything related to money exists in that kind of world. While investing, you have to give yourself room for error. You have to plan on your plan, not going according to plan.